So you have been waking up again, awash in bad feelings. Once again, you found a little dead animal in front on your path. And have been asking yourself, what is the symbol? It's an omen, a message of death. It is like the snake leaving its skin. And in the shedding, that skin is coming to the forefront, is released from its pocket, an aspect of yourself that has been in a pocket within your Taurus field, stuck and fouling because it's not in the river of life, Eridanos, the magical river, a one with and flowing through all the portals into the ever greater rivers of yourself. And so it's also not getting the feedback of that. And so it feels separate. It is stuck in whatever emotion that pushed it out, whatever divided it from the truth through a very impactful negative emotion. So feeling bad made it split off from the truth, from your oneness with your soul. So now it has a different identity, and it is caught and stuck in that view of yourself and of life. And it's feeling bad. In the subconscious is triggered to bring back some of that water back into your river, and to bring it into an organic crystallization again, because the geometry of it is distorted. So it's like the broken water crystals. Yeah. When then the water starts to foul, it loses its crystalline structure. And so this is unstructured water. This is like more like chaos, it's distortion, it's in sound, it's noise. And it has already improved quite a bit from this morning, because it instantly went into the flow of a session and light language came through, and you didn't even speak it out loud. You spoke it. It was happening. You were speaking it in your mind as the communication was also happening silently in your mind with us, with your higher self. This is your permission slip. This is how you flow. And so we went into explaining why we say higher, because we knew we would want to share this. Higher refers to the faster spin oscillation rate of the particles that make up space-time, that make up all living life forms and all matter within space-time. Different forms of partiki, which are all Tauruses, down to the atom, and pre-atomic matter, also called plasma or plasmatoids, OID, portal ID, identity. So OID, portal identity. A portal has no identity, is a portal, is a hole, port is door, where it threads through the river. Source is the portal through which the river flows. Plasma, water. Plasma is the, liquid, solid, gaseous, so fourth phase of water, but it could be also fifth phase of water, I'm not sure. Plasma, fifth phase of water. Plasma is also pre-atomic matter. Crystalline, so water has crystalline structure, as this plasma rain has been coming to Earth. It's penetrating Earth and all the life forms on it. It fills the atmosphere with this plasma crystalline matter. This is light, so this is a very high oscillation rate of the partiki, and that is the frequency of the rotation in time, rotational spin of the partiki, which are all in the form of Taurus. So Taur is door, also is gate, is portal, and it's also Taurus. The Taurus has the bull's horns like this, like Isis's headdress, and there you have the U on top, is also like the crescent moon, when the moon is down like this. And so this is like a U. It's also the Holy Grail. It's a chalice. It's a container. It's also the letter U. It showed me what came through was at the beginning, when the code was coming through, was in these images and this understanding at the bottom of the C, because the U of the Taurus horns is also part of the code is flip, switch, turn. You turn the U and it becomes a C, and when the C is also the ocean and the C is also the wave. So when you have a C either this way or that way, it doesn't matter. That's just the mirroring. You have a wave. When you go the bottom of the sea, then here, this wave is the surfer that surfs through the tube of the wave. And again, that's going through a portal, because the wave, when it crashes or continues its revolution, it's a tube. And they also call it the tube. At the bottom of the sea, you surf through the portal, yes, of water, of plasma, of crystalline structure. This is how the symbology comes through, and it's language, it's communication. Consciousness is speaking to you, higher consciousness, and then now we're explaining why we use the word higher and what it means. This plasma rain coming onto Earth is water, you can say matter consciousness and water consciousness at a very high hydrogen, high D Ra, and genetics. Higher dimension, Ra. Okay, well. Partiki spin is a higher partiki spin as what we are used to here in the physical, coming from the 3D. When there's this cloud of particles coming in that have a much higher, which means faster rotation rate per time, let's say nanosecond, revolution in time. So the frequency of the revolution is how many completions of a revolution, of the turn, of the spin, of the torus. Yes, at the bottom of the sea. And at the bottom of the sea is also the U, is the chalice, is the Holy Grail, is the heart. And so it's at the bottom of the heart, and that's where the soul comes into. That's the river, that's the Eridanus, the cosmic river, where soul, higher consciousness, and more subtle, that goes beyond what you call the physical body, where it densifies itself and then flows into the physical body. That's the first 8 cells of the heart. It's the first 8 cells that get created in an embryo that never change. Whereas all other cells, they die and reborn, they renew. So this is creating, of course, for one, this is where the aurora borealis is coming from, because it's an accelerator of the spin of the particles in our reality. The faster they spin, the higher that frequency of spin is. The river flows faster, more exchange, more feedback, so there is more soul flowing into the body. That part of the river, this is the light body, and when it flows into the body, it translates then into the physical flow of the bodily fluids and blood and so forth. A river always comes from a source, and then it takes its course and it ends in the ocean. When it took the whole entire course of its flow, it comes back to where it came from, which is the source, and flows back through the heart, gives the feedback into your higher self, into your soul, expressions through the higher densities. Now we're still explaining higher also. We're explaining many things at the same time here. That's why we're jumping around. The rotations per nanoseconds are more frequent. So we say it's a higher frequency. When there's higher feedback, it is a greater knowing of self. There is more information, more capacity for data processing. So it's more intelligent. It's more awake to itself. It's more knowing. It's more aware. And as this flow then increases, it has to do with an opening of the heart. It has to do with an acceleration of the heart. So what is at a lower frequency within your field, within your energetic field, within your emotional field? So these are the subtle bodies, and they manifest in the physical body. That's why you can feel when you have emotions, there's tightness in your throat, heart, solar plexus, belly, because it's not flowing. But you can feel it because that faster flow is now bumping up against it and stirring it up. It's triggering the emotions that have been not in the flow, that are still in a vision of self, caught in an identity, experience of self and life that is not coming from the perspective of the bottom of the sea. And that is also, the bottom of the sea is also where thine eye is single. That is where you see yourself and life from the perspective of the Ra, of the One, of which means unity consciousness, or unified consciousness, or one consciousness, where there is no separation between you and your higher self collective, between you and your soul, all the way back to source. And we've been showing you, ultimately, this is of course with every other being, but it is not within the reality of your presence, of your physical identity. You don't have that with every other being, because you're in the game. You're playing a role. You have a body, you have an identity. At the same time, you feel like when you're bringing through your soul and you're speaking with your higher self, but also when you're bringing in, you don't even know who, sometimes you know, sometimes you don't know. When you're bringing in other consciousnesses, other life forms, such as certain beings, and perhaps they even come from a different soul tree. However, ultimately all soul trees, all trees of life, all Tori, yes, that's the portal eye, that's the door, the portal, the porthole, the source eye, it's the source eye. All the living life forms in this universe flow back into the central eye, the central source, and come from there, because that's the power of all. And it is one being. The universe is one being, one living being. Just like every smaller life form within your body is a part of you. It is not you at the same time. It itself is itself. So even though the whole in the holographic universe entailed that can mean many things. So the story of all, or the information of all, is twisted through the DNA, packed tiny. Remember, the smallest particle, that's the geometry of that packing tiny into the 0 point, which means the infinity of small. So in the small we can go into infinity of a finite space. That's how all the information of the whole universe is within the smallest particle. And that's of course always in relativity to what we can perceive and what we know. It has to be infinite also, because it's not linear. It always keeps revolving, and when each rotation has fulfilled its spin, its course, So that's rotation within time, space. It has created also another time, space, reality. It has created more within that spin, more experience, more information. That's the growth of the soul and the growth of consciousness, and that will create time, space. That will create more worlds to experience and live in. As the portal, every chakra has the anatomy of this chalice, of this holy grail. Not just the heart chakra, but the heart chakra is the conductor, because it brings forth, it is where the harmony comes from. It is what harmonizes the rest, and it is where we feel love. When this energy, for example, comes through the throat chakra, or when it comes through the pineal or the crown or the solar plexus or the belly or the sacral and the root, we have different names for it. We describe it differently because it feels differently. It's the same energy experienced in different nuances, different flavors, different frequency. But frequency not necessarily as a higher, lower, but as a unique, like in the sense of the rhythm. It has its own rhythm and it has its own sound. So it has its own song. Yes. The song of the solar plexus is I am. And it is what takes away fear. When it comes through, it relaxes everything. Empowering, because it comes from within, is the power that comes from within. Midwifed and helped open up to our own power. The same thing is happening to Earth. So as her solar plexus is opening, which is the equator, yes, it's the energy that flows around the equator. It's the middle. It's the middle of the Vajra. It's the middle of the cross. And the central, so the sun at the center of the earth, yes, which is the nuclei of every particle, of every torus, Ta, Ra, Us, and it sees life as a reflection of itself, as itself. And this code that is coming through is where this oneness consciousness, it's bleeding in, it's coming in, and it's communicating with itself, because it's waking up on a universal level to itself. So it's like when this body wakes up to itself, it can communicate with every cell. The partiki that make up the DNA, it can communicate with that. It can connect, be aware of, communicate with. And then that particle of yourself is like you having the experience of that oneness consciousness coming through, and then that is this experience of the code of life itself speaking to you. Speak of as paranormal because it's like, how is this even, this is not random. It's consciousness, it's awareness. All has purpose, and this is what we're waking up to now, is that we see that every single moment has purpose, because every single moment there is a consciousness there, even when we're not conscious to it. And when we're not conscious to it, it seems random, and it seems like something happened against us. And now in this moment, we're bumping up against a part of you that cannot believe that, because it remembers happening. It still is so hurt from that. And that part of you says, no, there was no purpose in that. There was nothing good that came from that. We do not tell that part you're wrong at all. We do not push that part away. We feel that part, and it is absolutely true. And that first needs to be acknowledged. It was wrong, and it was unfair. When we stumble upon that within us, we have to allow that truth to come forth. Really receive that pain in that pain, that is the truth. So as this light rain penetrates, it also increases the spin of the river, of the grid works, of the energy body of earth, and it makes more light come through the inner sun, so it makes more light come through the solar plexus. So now they're showing me the tour on in Avalon, the hill of Avalon, and it is a gate. It is also a tower. So a tower is also an I, the letter I. And the tor, which is a door, which is a portal, is like the iris, yes. It's also the bottom of the sea. It's always coming back to the same thing. This is what the Taurus is, the tree of life. And this is what the Taurus, those two horns, represent in the Egyptian headdress. It has also another meaning that has to do with the constellation of Taurus and with the time space that they were in. So as the universal being is waking up to itself, the individual fractal life forms of that being, which is us, this is what is showing up in the outside as code, you can say, or symbology, or speaking to us messages, where we get that magical feeling of, oh my God, this is alive, and the flow of consciousness, and how we flow as Tauri's, as fractals of the tree of life, being a tree of life ourselves, quantum field where everything exists. From our perception, it's outside of time space. So the field where there is no identity, and the pain body is so intensely activated. It is then the calling, what is called for, is to, how can we be that container, that holy grail for that water that has been split off from the cosmic river of the tree of life, instead of identifying and feeling as the water that is in pain, that is fouling, where the crystalline structure has been destroyed and damaged, and where there's noise and no harmony. So how can we bring our heart into that, to reharmonize that through sound of love, heal that structure so that it can come back alive enough so it can rejoin the flow. As the flow of the cosmic river touches upon it, it already begins to do that naturally. But then there's instantly the resistance of that. As the touching, that's when the triggering happens. And in the triggering, because it's a dichotomy, it's not flowing together in harmony, the properties of spin are in reverse of the cosmic river, of the tree of life, of the organic flow of the being that is soul embodied, that is in truth, that is aligned with source. What has been split off is in inversion to that, and that means it's in resistance to that. So when the river comes, this is stirred and our attention goes there, and we feel like that because this hasn't been resolved yet. The natural conditioning is that as soon as something is triggered, we feel like that which is triggered. There is like full identification with that. That bad feeling that we are now identified with is immediately projected onto the outside, onto a story, so that it makes sense to us that the story that created this stuck emotion has a very certain flavor to it. Whatever triggered it, because it was a resound, because it resonated. But there's also the trigger through light, a lot of light coming in to trigger it. The conditioning is that this is projecting out because it doesn't know the truth and it doesn't know itself, this aspect of you. So it's stuck in that story that this, in my world, this particular circumstance and situation and happening is what caused this bad feeling, because that's what the memory is. And so anything that is like the memory that shows up, or if it doesn't show up and it's triggered just through the light, then nevertheless, anything that is on the outside that lends itself in the story as a resonance to this memory, it will be like one. It will be cause and effect. It will project onto that as the cause. That is keeping it stuck, staying in that story, in that perspective. That is like a constant reverberation that is feeding this pain body. And that's the identification with this bad feeling. It also sucks our energy when we believe in that, when we focus in that way. And so then the pain body is fed, and all the entities that are attached to the pain body, the parasites, that's all the places where there's not a lot of flow. These are all pockets and aspects of self. How can we stop the feeding of the pain body? How can we hold those emotions without having the sense who I am? And we don't even know what that is because it's all in the unconscious, but it's not good. How we see and feel about ourselves is how we feel about others and the world around us. How do we stop the projection? How do we cut that umbilical cord plugged into this way of seeing and turn the projector around into the inside so that we can see the source of it? And we can come back to the portal where it all began and flow back into truth. And thereby the spin reverses back into organic. Then have the wherewithal within my consciousness to act for the highest good in the best possible way with whatever situation comes at me. How I can be in a way with that situation that is not coming from this place of distortion and pain, where it's just a reverberation keeping the pain in place. It's never going to get resolved. How can I come into a consciousness that will also resolve it on the outside? Because when we are the receiver of it, we are now anchored in, coming from our true self. That is the soul, your true self, holding the aspect of yourself that has forgotten itself and is lost in a very painful dream. It's not just that simple to say, okay, I'm feeling it. It's not changing. We went straight into the communication with our higher self. Then light language began in the mind. So you hear it and you speak it at the same, is coming through recalibration. And it is what allows that severance, letting go of that conditioning to project and hold on to that story. The story is not, it's not that it's wrong. It's how it is, it's how you see it, and that is truth as well. It's the truth of how you see it, and of what is creating and why this is so painful. And the memory, the physical and the cellular memory, that is all true. But that is stuck in space and time. It's not what is happening here and now. That is stuck in a certain posture that is not in harmony with your true self and with the true self of the universe, with the truth of source. That is coming from divide identity. This place of your whole being. This is just one little aspect of your being, but it takes over your whole experience when that gets triggered and you're awash in these feelings. And this is what is happening now as that light rain is coming in. It's very intense. What I do is I ask for help. Come and help me. I can't hold this on my own without being sucked into it, without identifying. Help me. So I connect with my higher self. And then the light language came in for quite a while. And after that, I could tell that there was a little opening. That's all it takes. When you're in a dark room and there's no light, you can see that light, and it doesn't matter how small it is. That means on the other side there is light, and you know that's the truth, and you know in that moment that you are in a bubble or a wall around you, and you know there's freedom on the other side, and you now have your attention there, and that's where you want to go. It's more than hope, It's knowing. That's a very strong feeling. That tiny little opening is also enough to bring through soul. And now you got the soul connection. That's a potential in anyone. But it doesn't have to come through as light language or whatever. Even though it was happening in the mind, it's still there. You're not hearing it with the physical ears, but it's still there. It's a sound geometry, crystalline structure. As that flow comes in, it helps to sever the old conditioning of this projection. So, and it recalibrates, brings my attention, because as I'm then in the light language, because it's expressing and it's receiving at the same time, it's speaking and listening at the same time, even though it's happening in I wasn't speaking out loud, it doesn't matter, because there's certain, the particle spin of the aspect of yourself that is identified in this split off from the river of life is a very bad feeling self, has a very low vibration. And so as your attention is redirected through the light language, but it could also be mudras. It could be like all of a sudden a vision of you perhaps dancing, or whatever the vision is. That allows us and is like the support to bring our attention back into our soul self. And this is, you see, this is not the resistance to the bad feeling. It's the opposite. This allows us to be the chalice and to feel the emotions without being in the projection of that identity in that story. And that then is how the spin of the inversion gets reversed and reorganized, reharmonized as well, so that it fits back in the geometry. That's the reintegration of shadow. Ascension, it's all the same thing. It gets translated, if it resonates, into your own language, and you find your own way to translate this into your experience to receive the support that you need to do this. It's not going to lay off, it's only going to get more intense at the same time. It's not like exponential like this, in phases. The higher the vibration is, the higher the waves, the bigger the waves. So we have the sine wave, we have these waves, right, of frequency, energy, consciousness, brain waves. Yeah, so every particle is also a wave. The larger the wave, the sound wave, and so it's large and wide, they're stronger as well, even though they're more subtle to us, because what spins faster in relation to our body is more subtle. And these are the tsunami waves. Are we surfing them? Can we surf them through the bottom of the sea? So there are these vortices in rivers, yes, and this is said that this is what makes a river flow, is the vortices. It's all the tori of them that are spinning, of the water particles, of the water crystals, elements, right, coming together in tornadoes. And that's why the salmon can swim up the stream, because they swim between, in between areas of the torus, and between them there is the opposite flow. There's that drawback, as the ocean also, the waves of the ocean, they get pushed onto the shore, but then there's the drawback. So these are two forces going into opposite directions, and that's the holy polarity, plus minus, male female. And also this is how time flows. This is why the natives, they say that the past and the future, you can go either way, and the future is the plus, is the expression, is the masculine flow, and the feminine is the past, is the in-breath, is the flow that connects to the past. And this is also why they say that everything is existing at the same time. It is on our perception flowing in the river in one direction that we have that experience of going through linear time. But what is happening now, as we are bringing in the frequency, so descending, ascending, bringing in, embodying more of the fourth dimension, which is the bridge into the fifth dimension, density, each dimension is like an octave of sound bandwidth, just like a bandwidth of color or radio waves. Like when you tune into a radio, there is that sweet spot where you get it crystal clear. You can receive what is being broadcast through that sweet spot within a bandwidth. Each octave, each dimension has this bandwidth from the slowest spin to the highest spin. But if you were to go slower than over the threshold or higher than the threshold within that bandwidth, then you would leave that particular dimension, that particular field of experience. Each dimension has its own order, because the higher order, the next octave, has a different baseline and it has different geometry, because it can pack more information into its space than the one below. The flow of time and space. And this is changing now as we are coming into the fourth dimension. As we have heard, this has to do with time. In the third dimension, we had a relatively clear outline, paradigm of relatively solid of what the feeling of time was. It was very linear and more simplistic. We lived in that box, in that paradigm, and we were able to make sense of it on that level. We were not able yet to make sense of it from the higher dimension coming in. We were not ready yet. We have to get ready. We have to go up within the third dimension until we're at the highest place. So we made all those revolutions. We earned it. We are now in our consciousness. We are ripe. We are mature. We are ready to receive and to pack into our geometry and hold within our space, slowly, particle by particle, the higher vibrational fourth dimensional realities. Now the feminine aspect comes back in, which is the inside and also the hidden, the mysterious. The past is coming in. The past is catching up with us. That we are now interested in knowing what really happened in the past, because there was so much distortion. And the feminine backflow, there was no feedback coming from that. This has been like blocked, and Vatican keys, the time flow of Earth. We're in this process of coming back into that organic flow, and that's the balance of the male and the female, and that's when the restoration is the female time flow is happening. The reactivation, and it's like us bringing our attention more into the right hemisphere of the brain, which is also again the feminine. The magnetic and the electrical is the plus, and the masculine, the Ida Pingala. We start to be able to see code. We start to see it's not random. It's speaking to me. What does it mean? Because it comes in a way that it's completely personal to us. This code is in everyone. It just is received and expressed in a unique way through everyone. An inspiration and an activation. So it's never like I'm telling you how it is, or so. There's none of that. Sharing of the cosmic river that then can resonate with your cosmic river. It is the namaste. It is the I see you. The Magi see all within me sees the Magi see all within you. So that's the one speaking to itself through the form. When we come from that place, we tap into the quantum field of ourselves, and there is collapse of the old, leaving the skin, and creation of new. When we're already more in our soul selves, when this light rain is coming through, that skin is triggered, and we notice, that doesn't feel good anymore. And it drags me down. And I want to release it, but the conditioning is being in resistance to it, distracting from it. And so the healing of it is to receive it, to take that when it's triggered as an opportunity. So when we're in it and it feels bad, that's an opportunity, and that's the turnaround. That's when you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's when you can bring through and connect to your soul to help you hold space for it. You know the difference between distracting yourself. You're not being present with it yet. You're not receiving it yet. So there's a difference between pushing it away and it going away, or receiving it and it transforming and thereby going away. And the normal conditioned coping mechanism is pushing it away. And because that's how we've been conditioned, that's the unconscious way, the only way we knew how to do it. And now comes remembering. And that's also the feminine time flow, is remembering. And the masculine time flow is imagining, creating. As it has been said, without roots, no wings. Without roots of the tree, where the tree started and came from, and those roots also expand as the crown expands of a tree. As the memory expands of who we are, also we can grow into something completely new that has never been there before. New fractal expressions of ourselves. When I'm speaking of separation from source, I'm speaking of that which is distorted. I'm not speaking of that which is fractal down into density, and there's a denser sense of self. There's not a knowing of an experience of the full I am with the whole universe. So there's just this more limited, but still whole, which is why the third dimension can be extremely wonderful when it's in harmony. It has to do with how much are we in alignment with source and in harmony. As the fourth dimension is manifesting more and more in our reality, the old sense of time is breaking apart, and a new sense which is incorporating the old. Similar, what they're showing me now is the star tetrahedron, that is 2 tetrahedrons like this, is reshaping into the octahedron, and they have the same amount of sides. So it's that the bottom, see this, the star tetrahedron has 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, and the bottom 4, and there's 2 of them. So you have the bottom side of the plus male and the top side, the ceiling, of the minus female, and it's like there's 2 membranes there that are separating each other. So which is the geometry that makes the light body vehicle of the toroidal field. There's that process going on of how the geometry is changing, a reassembly. Every dimension that is higher entails all the information, everything from the lower dimension, but not in the same arrangement. The geometry is different. There's much, much more information, and our ability to process data is also expanded according to a new way of seeing, a new order. We're starting to acknowledge that more, that which is coming through the intuition, that which is coming through the soul, this kind of language. And then it is the male side of the brain that also shifts and changes, because it's receiving now more from the feminine than before. It was like almost atrophied, because that's what this system is built for. It is built to bring our attention and keep it only in the left side of the brain, in the masculine, only in the physical expression, the 666, which is the carbon based, it's the lowest based physical expression of life, because it is only there that those of parasitical consciousness, of living from others' source, and this only goes by force. Yes, so they're living from the consciousness of taking. They're the takers. They're so out of alignment with source that they're starving. They would die if they wouldn't take it from others, unless they would reverse their spin and went into healing. But some got so far away from themselves that this would instantly, they would like die. They would dissolve, because the detox would be within the form that they are in. They're all clinging to the form. That's why they have all these, that they don't want to die, and they have all these technology to stay alive. They don't want to go back to light because they're so scared of that detox. Every time though we create pain for another, it is an illusion to think that we don't create it for ourselves as well. And the addiction is so that I don't have to feel this pain, because naturally the body will always, like nature always goes back into balance. It brings the sense of time back into balance, and balance, the middle way opens up again, the Sushumna, which is the quantum field. They told me was the two are one and they are three. With the balance of that opens up the middle, which is the Sushumna, where there is stillness. So here this is also movement. Space is masculine, time is feminine. Then there's the masculine time, which is the future flow, and the feminine time, the past flow, remembering, creating the new. Then we can see source again in everything. Then we can see the truth in everything again, because then everything starts to make sense, and we can open it up, and it connects with everything else, and we see the purpose in everything. It's the 0 point, which is the bottom of the sea. The ocean flows to the ocean on the inside. Bottom of the sea is where it goes into the other one. And now what you can also see is the X, where the X marks the spot. It's the Yod-He, Vod-He, where the flow, that's that ascension, descension, that's that feedback between the subtle and the more dense manifestation. The vortices of the water flows into the ocean that is on the other side of the inner earth. It's like we're curved this way, like an arc, and they're curved this way. The outer earth is the male part of the earth. The northern is the magnetic and the southern is the electric flow. Always where the polarity, where the two are one, that's where that 0 point is. They weave always through the 0 point, through the zero. That's where they make the X, and that's where X marks the spot in the 0 point, where the two are one and they are three. And the 3 is the neutral energy. So it's the hidden. The left and the right hemisphere. As that comes into balance, our consciousness can rest in the center of them both and be both of them at the same time. And then that's where that is the perfect with knowing yourself. So that's the feedback loop into the time flow, into the past. And then with that, the peak performance of like the highest good of all is through that quantum field where everything is possible is created. You are not alone in this, even if you are all alone. This is now my higher self speaking to me, as we told you. You have to be comfortable and fully all alone. You have to embody being all alone without resisting it, without being sad about it, without going into victim consciousness about it, which is then now you're identified with that idea of being all alone in a certain way that makes you feel really sad. And there's a huge part of that in you still. And we say that first when you come into receiving this part of being all alone, this distorted feeling of how sad it is and how you feel the lack of connection. And we say that this is so that you not go outside and look for connection in the out, because that's why you're all alone. That's not what is wanting to happen. What is wanting to happen is because you feel so bad being all alone, you start reconnecting with your soul. You turn to yourself. You turn inside. You start to find the love inside of you again. You need to be in that feeling of pain of being all alone in order to receive that back, this pocket, this aspect of you that is in pain, so that you can come into the experience of being all one. Alone, all one. That's when that distortion that is split off from the cosmic river comes back into the organic, and then you can feel the all one. but you can only come to the all one through resolving, so receiving that part of yourself that feels all alone because it's split off from itself. Connection, sisterhood, brotherhood, that kind of community connection, that is natural to us. But when there is this in the way of an aspect of you that is feeling so alone, you need to feel that and receive that first in order to come into that experience that you are all one with your soul. And then naturally, the natural flow is brotherhood, sisterhood, connection, community, and so forth.